There's one fallacy that probably is the gold mine of political fallacies, and that's the fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc.
I love it.
Latin scholars, thank you. After this, therefore, because of this. Because event A came before event B, A must have been the cause of B. Or another one you hear all the time is, well, marijuana may not be so bad in itself, but it's a gateway drug. Because 85% of heroin addicts started off with marijuana. How many times have you heard that? It's apparently true, but 100% started with milk. So there's also a gold mine of post hoc ergo propter hoc jokes. You wouldn't think so, but there are. And one is about a Gentile man who's about to marry a Jewish woman. And she says, well, I have to insist that you convert. And if you're going to convert, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to become circumcised. The guy says, circumcised? I said, gee, he's worried about it. Is it going to be painful? He's not sure what to expect. So he goes to a Jewish male friend of his and he says, tell me, you've been circumcised. Is it painful? And his friend says, well, to tell you the truth, I was 8 days old when it happened to me, but I'll tell you this, I couldn't walk for a year afterwards.
Can I do another one, Tommy?
Could I stop you?
There's another one from the shtetl. This old guy has married a younger wife. I know whereof, and so he can't in bed satisfy her, and he's really feeling awful about it. So he goes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, I have this situation. He explains it, and the rabbi says, well, there's actually a standard way of dealing with that. What you do is you get somebody to stand next to the bed and wave a towel over the two of you while you're making love. He says, get a younger guy, and that should take care of it. So he hires a younger guy. The guy waves the towel. He gets in bed, goes at it. Wife doesn't feel a thing. He's really depressed. He goes back to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, well, in some of these cases, we have to make a slight adjustment in the procedure. What you do is you put the younger guy in bed with your wife, and you wave the towel. The guy does that. He puts the younger guy in bed with his wife. He waves the towel. His wife is going crazy, yelling, screaming, orgasm after orgasm. At the height of the 10th one, the old guy looks down and says, schmuck, that's the way you wave a towel.
Another interesting philosophical challenge with the interpretation of data is an ethical challenge, and that is that, as we all know, it's possible for a researcher to stretch the data to support the conclusion that he wants to support. Nobody in this room, of course, has ever done that, but unfortunately, there are people out there that we hear about from time to time that have done that. So, an elderly woman walks into the men's day room at her nursing home.
Anybody who can guess what I have in my hand gets to have sex with me tonight.
An elephant?
Close enough.
One thing about empiricism, it has become so much the primary theory of knowledge in the West that it's now our default position, right? If somebody tells you that they know something about the world, you assume that they got that information either through their own senses or somebody else's senses who passed it on to them. But in any case, we assume that that knowledge came from sensory experience. So there's even a story that illustrates how empiricism has become our default position. There are 3 women standing in the locker room of their club, when all of a sudden a man goes running through the locker room. He's wearing nothing but a bag over his head. And the first woman looks at him and says, well, at least it's not my husband. The second woman looks at him and says, no, it isn't. And the third woman looks at him and says, he's not even a member of our club.
The triumph of empiricism.
Every researcher's least favorite law, the law of unintended consequences. For example, obviously, there's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Heisenberg said that sometimes the very observation of the phenomenon can change the phenomenon itself, an unintended consequence of carrying out the experiment.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, Danny. What's up?
Well, do you remember that time? It was just 9 months ago. You and I went out for a spin, and the car broke down. It was dark. We looked around. There was a house with a light on. We went and knocked on the door. There was this young, rather attractive widow. Let us in. Let us stay for the night. You remember that?
Oh, of course I do, yeah.
Yeah. Did you happen to pay that widow a visit during the course of the night?
Oh, geez. Yeah, Danny, I did. I did pay her a visit.
And did you happen to give her my name?
Oh, God, Danny, I'm so sorry. Yes, I did give her your name instead of mine. Why?
Well, because she died and left me $1 million.
Aristotle, for example, way back 2,500 years ago when he was writing his metaphysics, he said there's one fundamental distinction when you're talking about anything real, and that's between what he called essential characteristics and accidental characteristics. Essential characteristics, he said, are the characteristics that make a thing what it is. Without those characteristics, it wouldn't be the same thing. Accidental characteristics are everything else. You know, they're characteristics that a thing may or may not have. It may tell you something about how the thing is, but it doesn't tell you what it is.
Essential and accidental characteristics. So Thompson turns 70, and he decides he wants to really, I'm about to turn 70, but who cares? And he decides he really wants to spruce up. So he goes on this strict diet, and he exercises daily. He plays volleyball. He sits in the sun. He loses 5 inches on his waist, puts 6 inches on his chest. He's well-toned. He's looking terrific. He decides he's going to top it all off with a sporty young haircut, goes to the barbershop, gets the haircut, steps outside, and a bus runs him over. He's lying in the gutter, dying, and he looks up to the heavens, and he said, God, how could you do this to me? And a big voice from above says, to tell you the truth, Thompson, I didn't recognize you. Both of us are 70. And so one of our prime interests in all of this, it's appealing, this biological immortality. But none of them reverse aging.
So you're 70 forever.
So we're 70 forever, which reminds me of my final joke. There's this 70-year-old guy, and he's walking down the street. And all of a sudden, a frog looks up, and he says, hey, old guy. He says, pick me up, kiss me. I turn into a beautiful princess, and we'll make love all night. So he leans over, he picks up the frog and sticks him in his pocket. He keeps walking and walking. After a while, the frog says, excuse me, sir. He says, I don't think you heard me. You kiss me, I turn into a beautiful princess, and we make love all night. And the old guy says, I heard you all right, Froggy. At my age, I'd rather have a talking frog.
On that happy note,